Good morning. This is author Germinal Van. I am here today to present to you a new book entitled Democratic Socialism on Trial: Why It Won't Work in America. This is my personal proof copy, but the official copy is already available on Amazon.com, so please feel free to purchase it whenever you want or whenever you can. This book is actually a book of political philosophy. And what I'm trying to do in this book is to simply investigate one ideology that has become a growing ideology in the United States: democratic socialism. But democratic socialism, in fact, is an oxymoron because it tried to combine one ideology that is harmless and one ideology that is harmful. So, democracy. So when we speak of democracy, we attach it with liberty, and then socialism, arbitration, coercion. So this ideology states that democratic socialism aims to promote liberty, so the liberty of the individual in a democratic society, while collectivizing the means of production. But one thing that is important to understand is that democratic socialism is not to be confused with social democracy. You know, when you argue with people who believe in socialism and you ask them about examples of countries that have been prosperous under socialism, they always give you the same list: Canada, Scandinavia, so Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland. And some will even tell you Cuba, and they will say that it because of the embargo that Cuba could not prosper. Some will even say the Soviet Union because it lasts a while, and so on. But let's come to social democracy, so Canada and Scandinavian countries. Those countries are not socialist. By definition, a social democracy is a society where capitalism is regulated by private property is still a major factor of the means of production. So a social democracy is simply a capitalist regime with a strong and amplified welfare state. So Scandinavian societies, for instance, are social democracies. They all have a market economy, but they have a strong government intervention in their society. But democratic socialism is one step further. It's one step above social democracy. Democratic socialism does not believe in capitalism. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has stated herself that capitalism is irredeemable. She said it herself. She does not like capitalism. Bernie Sanders does not like capitalism either. And you have these two prominent politicians in American government who are promoting a new form of socialism. Of course, if they say that they're promoting socialism directly, people will be afraid. Socialism has been in the United States for a long time. The Socialist Party has existed in this country for a long time. But if you say that you're a socialist, people will reject you. They will say, you sound too radical for me. I can't associate myself with you. So they put democratic socialism. So because you put the word democratic in front, so it sounds more appealing. It sounds more believable, I will say. But democratic socialism and socialism itself are not different at all. Because the essence of democratic socialism is that the means of productions are collectivized. So if the means of production are collectivized, it suggests that private property will be either undermined or it will be abolished. So when you have somebody like Bernie Sanders who wants to basically nationalize the major industries in the United States, it's something that you should be afraid of. Because if the government nationalize the means of production, you do no longer retain private property. And do you believe that when the means of productions are collectivized, you have your word to say in it? Do you believe that if the state collectivizes the means of production, you will benefit from it? Absolutely not. No, you won't benefit from it. And we saw that with the Soviet Union. Exactly. They come and say, we're going to put everything together so that the worker is the one that will make the profit of his work. But as I said, we live on planet Earth where we are imperfect beings driven by our self-interest. People who run the state are human beings. They're driven also by their self-interest. They have an institutional agenda. So you're going to let a select few having control of the means of production, while the mass, which is us, we will be producing everything, but we will not be able to enjoy the means of production. We will not be able to enjoy the profit of what we have been producing, because the state is the one that will be deciding, okay, you have that, you don't, you have this, you do not. And that is what Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are trying to do. That's why I wrote this book. I want people to understand completely and fully that democratic socialism is something completely different than social democracy. Social democracy, I repeat again, believes in a market economy, but strongly encourage the government to intervene in the economy. Democratic socialism does not believe in capitalism. Democratic socialism does not support a market economy. Democratic socialism supports the collectivization of the means of production. Democratic socialism supports the restriction and the abolition of private property. It is very important to distinguish the two. This book of political philosophy, I spent a lot of time investigating this ideology because it truly intrigued me. You see in classrooms, you see the young people literally claiming, believing in the words that Senator Sanders has been preaching since 2015, 2016. Free healthcare, free education, free housing, free this, free that. First of all, free education will not work, and I'm going to say why. Making tuition free, first of all, tuition is expensive because of government. People don't know that, but because of the Higher Education Act passed by Lyndon Johnson in the 1960s, that law enabled the government to give loans to students. Since the government is able to give loans to students, therefore, the schools have the opportunity to raise their tuition, because they assume that you're going to take those loans, you're going to have to pay back. So you cannot declare that you're bankrupt if you take loans from the government to pay your tuition. Because if the Higher Education Act was not implemented, what people need to understand is that everything is a service. When a business entity or someone is promoting a service or trying to deliver a service, he's going to look at his clientele, who can afford, who cannot afford. If there was no Higher Education Act. You're trying to go to a school, but the money you have is not enough to afford tuition. Now, let's say the majority of the students are in your case. The school will have to reduce the tuition so that you can afford. And that's what people don't get. Because the government, who plays the role of the third party, comes and say that we're going to make things fair. But because you're trying to make things fair, you implement regulations on the both entities that have their own transaction, which is us, individuals, and the school from whom we are trying to get that service. So you impose regulation on us and on the school, but you do not impose regulation on yourself, who is the government. So because you let the school taking loans, and you know that the individual, so the customer, which is us, we have to pay those loans one way or another once we graduate from college, you let the school raising tuition. It's the same for healthcare. People complain about the fact that healthcare is expensive. Healthcare is expensive, of course, because of the third party concept again. The third party concept is this time the employer-based healthcare. If there was no employer-based healthcare, which means that you have to get healthcare directly from the private insurance, you can make arrangement and they will lower the cost for you, because at the end of the day they are trying to make money. You cannot sell a product to someone who cannot afford it. If the majority of people cannot afford something, the business have to bring the price down so people can buy to still stimulate demand. But because the employer is the one making the arrangement between you and your private insurance, so the price of healthcare goes up once again. It's the same for housing, because government interfere between you and the entity from which you're trying to get that service. And imagine now we have a system of democratic socialism where everything is collectivized. What do you think is going to happen? During the debate, when the CNN journalist asked Bernie Sanders and all the Democratic candidates if they would raise taxes on the middle class, only Beto O'Rourke said no, actually, although that was a lie. But most of them tried to dodge the question. They try to not respond because they know that those who will pay the price of those silly programs are simply the middle class, which is us. We're the one going to pay from it because the government has no actual property. The government has no funds. When they say something is government funded, it simply means it's taxpayer funded. It means they take it from your paycheck all the time. So you can't believe in an ideology that is in itself contradictory. It's an oxymoron. An ideology that promotes, as I said at the beginning of this video, an ideology that promotes two antagonistic ideas. One that promotes freedom and the majority of the free will, and the other that promotes arbitration, coercion, and command. You try to bring them together. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think the one that promotes arbitration, coercion, and command will let the harmless one prevail? Of course not. As I said, we are human beings. Once people are in power, they're pursuing their self-interest. They do not care about you. You can complain all you want. They will pass policies, they will not pay the price of their failures. They pay no price for being wrong. Democratic socialism itself is a fallacy. It is a fallacious idea. I personally don't like social democracy, but at least social democracy doesn't abolish private property, so there's still something we can do. But democratic socialism? No way. They're going to take everything away from you progressively at first, is democratic. So, oh, okay, you get to vote for the people who will eventually kill you. That's what democratic socialism is. And then the government gets bigger and stronger, and they start to confiscate things one by one, and then they start confiscating more of your property. And then when you realize that it's a tyranny, it's too late. They took everything away from you. That's what democratic socialism is. And I repeat again, is a fallacy. It won't work in America. No sane American will accept that kind of idea here in this country. There is always above 1 million people immigrating in this country because we want freedom. If people leave their homeland to come here is for a reason. It's because they have the opportunity in this country to thrive, which they couldn't do where they were from. So now you have people like AOC and Bernie Sanders who are trying to preclude those opportunities to prevail by promoting government control, government tyranny, government coercion, government command over your life. You must be aware. Democratic socialism will bring you down. It says democratic, but it is socialism, period. It is socialism they try to rehabilitate in this country. But socialism sounds too aggressive, so we need to, we need to smoothen a little bit so that people won't pay attention to it. But that's what they're trying to do. So you need to be mindful. You need to be aware. Democratic socialism is a dangerous ideology. It will not and it will never prevail in the United States. And even in another country, wherever they try, they can try it in South America, they can even try it in Africa, they can try it in Asia. Democratic socialism will not work. You cannot collectivize the means of production and expect people to prosper. If you want for prosperity to occur in a society, you need private property. Without private property, it is impossible. The lack of private property equals economic stagnation. Ladies and gentlemen, that was my presentation for this book, Democratic Socialism on Trial. It's honestly one of my favorites so far. And I strongly encourage you to get yourself a copy of this book and to read the entire book to understand how I conducted that normative investigation to debunk democratic socialism as a false ideology and as a dangerous and fallacious ideal as well. Until next time, please take care of yourself and see you soon.